Hi everyone. I'm Pete from PEMF UK. Good for you to join us on this sunny Friday in the UK. I'm just going to see if we can get Andy on from NewMed, who's going to be joining us as per normal. So just please bear with us for 1 minute while I drink my coffee. Here he is. Hey, Andy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, thanks. Yeah, it works again.
Yeah.
I'm always surprised.
I'm on a backup laptop as well today because
How are you?
I left my laptop at home. So,
Wow, that's brave, using a backup.
uh,
Yeah, good. Well, good to see you. How are you?
yeah, good. And yourself?
Yeah, really, really good. Thank you. Yeah, the sun's shining. We're gradually coming out of lockdown. I've got my coffee. It's Friday. Yeah, it's all good. Thank you. All very good indeed. So, yeah, thanks for joining us. There's a big echo there. I'm not sure. Where's that coming from? Andy, have you made any change on your settings? It's just, I can hear it just coming back to me. How's that? That's good.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah. No problem. Brilliant. Okay, so thanks for joining us, Andy.
It's 11 hours.
Those of you that watch this PEMF talk that Andy and I do, we try and pick a subject or an interesting client, and we like to talk all things PEMF. And Andy decided, or had a good idea, that it was probably time we got around to the subject of frequency, or hertz, as we sometimes call it, which I thought was a good one because it's a question that we often get, isn't it, Andy, in the PEMF world?
Yeah.
What is it? What difference does it make? Why should I choose one over the other?
Mm-hmm.
So we thought it would be a good topic for this week for us to discuss. So do you want to start giving your thoughts, Andy, being very experienced in the PEMF world?
Yeah, no problem. Sorry. Just having some technical issues with this this backup laptop. I think it's
How are you?
running. So no, it like you mentioned, we have people come into the PEMF world and they come in, at the start of their journey, and there's a few main things that cause a lot of confusion with people, and one is the intensity, what intensity to go for, and we covered that on one of our other talks. And the other main issue is frequency, and I suppose in the frequency also in that category is the waves of the frequency waves, different types of forms. So it's people sort of say to us, we get a lot of people that kind of come to us and say, right, I've read something and this frequency is what I need, and it's like, okay, let's bring it back, let's start again. What are you trying to achieve, and we go from there. We'll try not to go too in depth today because obviously with frequencies, we can go off on a tangent and talk for hours. And I think actually when I do that with people, it actually causes more confusion than we started out with. Yeah, exactly. So we'll kind of talk about some of the basic principles of the different frequencies and how they're applied, and when people are first starting out. I think it's a good starting point to say that there's not one frequency for a specific condition or a specific thing to treat, which a lot of people think there is, and a lot of people think that there's a guidebook to, if I am treating rheumatoid arthritis, I need to use 10 hertz and I need to use it for this time. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. I wish it did, because it would make our lives a lot easier. But the general rule that I find, and from my experience in working with PEMFs and the time that I've been doing it and the results that I see and everything like that, is the most important point is what I say to people is just introducing PEMF therapy at therapeutic levels or frequencies is better than not.
Yeah.
So, you know, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're treating 8 hertz or 12 hertz or you know, there's a general guide, and we'll kind of go through that and why you'd use lower frequencies compared to higher frequencies.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're using PEMF therapy at the low frequency levels, you know, it's generally better than not, if that makes sense. A quick guide to what we usually go with, and what you find a lot of systems will use when you actually drill into their frequencies that they use for certain programs, is the easiest rule to follow is we normally tell people to use higher frequencies in the morning compared to lower frequencies in the evening. And that all comes down to the human brain waves more than anything, which I think you're all aware of, and you know what I'm talking about. But there's the reasons we say use lower frequency in the evening is generally because it could affect your sleep if you're using a higher frequency late in the evening.
Yeah.
Vice versa, using a higher frequency in the morning is going to help with alertness, concentration, you know, give you that kick to get you going and get you running throughout the day. So those frequencies, they're all cast as low and therapeutic frequencies. So although we're using a higher frequency in the morning and a lower frequency in the evening, ultimately we're still having the end result, which we're treating those certain areas in the body that we're trying to treat. So, you know, if we're trying to treat rheumatoid arthritis, you use a higher frequency in the morning, you can still use a lower frequency in the evening, and it's still treating the rheumatoid arthritis, which people try and, you know, they struggle to make that connection.
I like that way you put that, Andy, because we often get asked about frequencies, look, what's better, one or the other? And as we often say, all PEMF is good. All PEMF devices are good. However, there is some nuance about, do you want to be applying high frequencies on and around the head, which could alert you, but actually lower or higher frequencies may well be better for a knee issue or something else that you're looking to address. So I like the way you put that, and it's interesting for the viewers really that if you read a whole bunch of studies, there's actually effective results right across the range for different intensities, different frequencies, different waveforms. And I think it's interesting that when NASA sort of started looking at PEMF, I believe it was in the 80s, and thinking, well, there's definitely something in this, you know, maybe for bone density, for preventing muscle atrophy, which is kind of wasting of muscles, all these kind of things that people get when they're not moving in gravity, because stressing the bones and stressing the muscles, as we all know, is good. You remove those things and we start to atrophy. Bones become less dense. So they started looking at this and said, right, there's millions of combinations of frequencies, Gauss levels, waveforms. What do we choose? And they just chose nominal numbers. I think it was 10 hertz, square waveform, 100 Gauss. And then they said, right, let's check that for a whole bunch of stuff. And every single thing they checked it for, from bone density to muscle atrophy, to proliferation of stem cells, which I believe were increased by 400% by the application of this 10 hertz frequency. They could probably have chosen 20 or 4 or 100 and probably have had similar results. So I like the way that you described that, Andy. And Sorry if we can't be really, really specific, but the good news is if you are applying PEMF to you, save for a couple of minor details about the time of day and where you're putting it on your body, all PEMF is good.
Yeah, exactly. No, I echo that completely.
Should we talk about? I put my frequency shirt on. Do you like it in honor of today's today's broadcast? Should we talk about what a frequency is, or just so people and how it's defined, and if you've got a device or you're looking at a device, the units of measurement.
Yeah.
I quite like the kind of analogy of throw a pebble into a still pond, and you get waves just like this.
Mm-hmm.
Waves, frequencies exist in everything in nature. They're all around us. The ones that we use in the PEMF world are bioresonant. So these devices that Andy supplies and that I work with as a business working with PEMFs and applying these to people and other things, that their energies and frequencies that exist in nature. So again, PEMF, these are the bioresonant frequencies. These are not the ones that are mobile phones, our Wi-Fi routers, our laptops, our electronic devices are putting out. These are at the megahertz and gigahertz end. Andy and I are talking about the super low frequencies. So, you throw a pebble in a still pond, and those waves, one wave per second, one peak trough back to the peak again per second is 1 hertz, which is the unit of measurement that you'll typically hear spoken about. So 10 hertz is 10 waves per second.
Mm-hmm.
And, as we say, we're talking about, we only use these bioresonant frequencies. So we're passing a PEMF device, we pass current through a copper wire or a copper coil. We switch that on and off, and that device literally replicates nature, which is why your body likes it, why your dog. I was working with horses this week, Andy.
Okay.
Yeah. Guess what? They all loved it.
Yeah. No, it's a common theme we hear, like you just mentioned with the pets. The pet side of things, and it happened with me. The first time I was introduced to PEMF therapy, I was laying on my mat, and I found that every time I was there, my dog became this lap dog, and he wouldn't leave my side every time I was using the system. And I'm thinking, he's never this cuddly.
No.
And at the time I didn't know why or see the connection. But over the years, and we hear it all the time, that people turn their systems on, sit on it in front of the TV, getting some treatment.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, all their house pets gravitate towards them and sit on them. It's and it just shows how they can almost feel it, and they gravitate towards the therapy. And and like you're saying, how natural it is. Your
dog probably wouldn't be too bothered whether you use 3 hertz or you use 23 hertz or 50 hertz, because it really, and there's no placebo with an animal, a bit like a very young child. As adult humans, we tend to overthink things and think, oh, we can get quite hung up about things. But with dogs, with horses, they just know this is a good energy. And, one of my clients who's really benefited from PEMF has an equestrian centre, said, look, will you come up and apply this to my horses? We used it on their dogs as well. The dogs loved it. The owner lay on the mat and the dog jumped on top of her tummy while she was pulsing, just as you've said. The horses loved it. One horse had a broken foot, a pedal bone. We could see it clearly on the x-ray. It was a human. We would pulse it. And so I guess what we're saying is, in a roundabout way, all frequencies are good for human or mammalian biology, correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Should we probably double down and make the distinction, therefore, because you touched on it very early on and it's very clear, about the time of day and perhaps about where on the body, because there are certain times And we can probably talk about frequencies and how they relate to brainwave frequencies as well. Do you think?
Yeah. So, I mean, we obviously provide full body systems quite often. So, like you say, it also depends on where you're treating the body as well. But a lot of the time we're kind of talking about a full body system. So people are laying on it, it's treating their head, their arms, their limbs, everything. So what we tend to go with the analogy that if you're using a higher frequency in the morning, a lower frequency in the evening, but like you said, sometimes higher frequencies can be slightly better for acute injuries or chronic conditions and that sort of thing. So
for tissue regeneration, for ligaments, tendons, bones, that type of thing, yeah.
So what we actually find works really well as well is that you can find a frequency that you really like, program that you really like, and it might be a higher frequency. You know, when we're talking higher frequencies like 23, 24 hertz and above. But what people actually do is they can use those in the evening, but they actually use 10 minutes worth of a lower frequency towards the end of their treatment, or they do a program, then they do 10 minutes on a lower frequency, and that kind of then brings everything back down again, puts your brain into the kind of theta delta realms, which is you know the natural brain waves that are working at that sort of time of day when we're looking at going to sleep and getting into a deep meditational state.
Yeah. So what we're saying is the brain likes PEMFs. Your dog's brain likes PEMFs. We can either be in a more active brainwave state. So the brainwaves, as I understand them, we go from delta, which is deep sleep, up into gamma, which is sort of almost like panic, very high frequency. We very rarely, if ever, get into those. They typically stop at beta, which is where you said, which is this alert state, which we're kind of in now. We're speaking, we're communicating, we're talking, we're thinking, we're responding. You talked about theta. So, the delta is deep sleep, really. So our brain, when we're in a state of deep sleep, which is that very regenerative tissue and mental healing state, which we're hopefully in and out of during the night, and we all aim for, because that's when we're repairing. Those are kind of between 1 and 4 hertz, or 1 and 4 waves per second with the brain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Theta, which you spoke about, which I liken that to, if you're an accomplished meditator, when we're in meditation of sort of 5 to 8, just over 8 hertz, these are the brainwave frequencies where we're in that very meditative state. And we have a whole body system. And if I take the frequencies to within that range, so perhaps Schumann resonance, which some viewers will know, this is kind of the main resonant frequency coming out of the earth that the earth naturally puts out. People, animals tend to find this very almost like a dreamy, in and out of consciousness, meditative state, which again is very good. But you wouldn't be having a conversation if you were in theta, like we are now.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Then I think we're around to kind of alpha phase, which is kind of, it's a slightly higher dreamy state. Maybe when we're in a passive state, I think when you kind of watch some mindless TV show, or I don't know, scrolling through your feed on Facebook, we might be in that receptive sort of alpha phase, but not like a two-way conversation that we're in now in beta. So and beta going up, as you were saying before, to around 23, 24, 25 hertz, which is where we are now, which is where we spend a lot of our day, in and out of that, and these sort of alpha, theta, slightly more meditative, dreamy states. And then hopefully when we go to bed, we go into deep sleep. So what we're saying is, and we can also get these sort of devices here. We're a big fan of these little near rhythms. You know, you can actually program this. So if I was driving, I would not want to put this on a deep sleep program, because that's going to be bombarding wherever I've got it. Let's say I've got it here. These lobes, this area of my brain, it would be applying theta and delta waves to, which would not be a good idea, would it?
No, exactly. So, you know, like you say, you wouldn't want to be using a low frequency, you know, morning or lunchtime, or like you say, especially when you're driving. And that's what can happen. You know, people fall asleep at the wheel. So, you know, they go into, you know, sort of an alpha state while they're driving, like you say, where you're sitting there scrolling through Facebook feeds. You know, when you're driving on a long motorway, you're in some kind of in the same state.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously dangerous when people drop into that theta stage and fall asleep.
Yeah. So what you're saying then is, you could, let's say you had a very long day where you had to be mentally alert. Could you, or would you, use a device like this and put it onto let's say enhanced cognitive function, which would be higher frequencies, to therefore entrain and guide most parts of the brain into that higher brainwave state to stay more alert, rather like a cup of coffee?
100%. So, and that's how some of the PEMF devices actually market themselves. You know, I've got a little Flex Pulse, one of the localized devices, relatively higher intensity, which I'll take. It's my travel companion, and I just don't suffer with jet lag at all. So you know, you get off, especially if you're going to America or Australia or something, then, you know, you get off the plane and you think, oh, you know, what time is it? Where am I? What's going on? You set one of these devices back to, you know, the beta stage and into alertness, and it will retrain your brain to start functioning in that, you know, in that stage.
Yeah.
And then, you know, you can be a lot more alert. So it's definitely works the other way around.
Yeah. So I've used to fly quite a lot. Hopefully at some point will be again. And yeah, I always had a PEMF device as a travel companion, and I read quite a lot of studies. It sounds like you've read the same ones, showing the efficacy for running sort of 10 hertz for resetting circadian rhythm. So when you get to the other side, and also I would use them because there are grounding benefits using PEMF. So if you're up in the air at 38,000 feet with all of that ionizing radiation, if you're using PEMFs which really come out of the ground and you are removed from, there are some beneficial qualities there as well. We're digressing a bit here, but it's kind of all linked. But again, I think it shows of the diverse use cases for PEMF. Yeah,
100%. And I appreciate the time, but there's one other subject that I think is quite important we touch on today while we're on the frequencies, is the actual waveforms. So it's another question that we get asked quite a lot, because certain systems there's kind of four main waveforms. When we look at frequencies, there's this, I can never say it, sinusoidal, or the sine wave, square wave, triangle, and sawtooth. So we have different manufacturers that use different frequency waves, and, you know, obviously the manufacturer will say that theirs is the best, and there's reasons why they're using that. A lot of the manufacturers tend to go down the square route, and the reason they go down the square route is all linked to NASA. So NASA, when they first started using this technology, they used the square wave, therefore it must be the best. But even if someone creates a square wave, no square waves are the same. So, you know, it's a lot of people are saying, oh, I've got the square wave, it's the NASA wave, it's the best. But actually, that wave is probably completely different to the wave that NASA designed in the first place anyway. But again, this question from you know, my aspect and from my experience, and, you know, what's the best one to use, I don't know if there is a best one to use. I can't tell you the best one to use, because I've used systems that use sine waves, I've used systems with triangular waves and sawtooth waves, and, we get results from all of them, you know, to a certain degree, depending on, you know, the quality of the system and the intensity and things we've touched on. But again, for me, you know, there's no clear-cut answer to that.
No.
And I wouldn't be put off by reading something that one of the manufacturers says, you know, unless you've got square wave, you're not going to get results. You know,
I completely agree.
You know, put you off, because
yeah,
as I say, but again, it's another one that we don't think there is a better one, but just the fact of having a PEMF device, and you've got a decent PEMF device that, you know, I can speak to you about, or Pete can talk to you about where are the good PEMF devices. You know, then that's fine. It's going to work as long as you're applying it.
Yeah. Well put, Andy. I would completely agree. I think a lot of manufacturers, let's say, you know, some manufacturers they feel that they have to provide a benefit. Oh, we have a patented waveform and it's great for this reason. Andy, you and I are of the opinion Gauss, which is the energy intensity, which we did our last PEMF talk on, that will, in my opinion, always trump frequencies and definitely waveforms. I think if NASA studied a sawtooth waveform, then, you know, you probably see that more prevalently in systems and say, oh, this is good, because I think they all work, as we were saying before. All PEMF is good for pretty much all things. Now, when a university wishes to carry out a study, they have to pick one frequency, one waveform, one energy intensity level. And because there are so many variables, literally millions and millions of variables, they have to pick one and say, right, we're going to decide on this and do the studies on that. And lo and behold, they find that it's good. Well, again, these are just nature machines. You know, here's another one. I know you guys you supply this. This is a great device. This is my little Oscar Pulse, low intensity device, brilliant wearable. This one, we have no control over the frequencies. From the technical spec I've seen, it starts at around 5 Gauss, 5 hertz. It's less than a 1 Gauss device, but 5 hertz, and then it cycles up to about 130, 140 hertz, and then it goes back down again over about a 15 or 20 minute period. So this is a device that I may leave on my knee overnight while I'm in bed if I've got a sore knee, because I'm getting all of that tissue regeneration, ion exchange, increased circulation, all of these things that we know that PEMF does, but it's well away from my brain, therefore it's not going to be exciting me. I wouldn't stick it on the back of my head or under my pillow. Whereas this device here, I always put this under my pillow, set it to deep sleep, and it's running theta and delta waves under my pillow, or I may run it in the evening to run a relaxation program, which is bringing me down from those more cognizant, active brainwave states, just to support my body's natural predisposition to relaxation at night, especially if I've had a stressful day, which is not often these days. So I'm working with PEMF and I love it. So have we left anything out, Andy, do you think?
I think we covered it.
I think we have. I think I'd probably just like to say, you know, sorry it seems this one seems to be a bit vague compared with Gauss or what does PEMF does, where we're more definite. And probably, you know, viewers of this can probably determine, don't get too hung up about the frequencies. Yeah, you know, if you read a study on this device here, you can program, you can manually override, as Andy said on a previous edition of this, you can actually try and replicate a study and say, okay, well, I've seen this study in Germany in 1992 saying that this frequency energy intensity was beneficial for this condition. By all means, replicate that, but it doesn't necessarily mean to say you'll be getting any better than if you've got a device such as this, better result if you just apply it to it and don't worry too much about it. Because really, when it comes to frequency, unless you're on or around the brain and wanting to induce certain relaxation, deep sleep states, or states of alertness, or learning, because theta is very good for learning as well. There's a lot of good studies there to say even if you're kind of half asleep and you're playing audiobooks in the background, you're actually taking this in. And if you ask questions the following day, you can answer conceptual questions on what you may have taken in that theta brainwave state, even though you might not be that aware that you were even learning anything because you were probably half asleep. So there are nuances like we're talking about, but generally what we're saying, Andy, I think is don't stress too much about frequencies. If your device has some control over it and pre-programmed in saying this is one for relaxation, great, use it in that way. But if it's a device like this that you haven't got control over, unless it's at bedtime, maybe just don't stick it on your head unless you know what frequencies it's actually emitting.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
We've covered it.
Right, so we'll call it a day at that. Not sure what we'll do the next one on, Andy. We can have a little bit of discussion on that. If there are any questions, this will be going up afterwards and we'll distribute it. I've had a few messages saying people couldn't make it and will it be rebroadcast? Yes, it will. We'll put it on the PEMF site. Andy will also put it on his. Just a little caveat I always like to say at PEMF, we don't diagnose, treat or cure anything. We apply PEMFs, which exist in nature, to people. We address the body. Body knows what to do with them, and it just supports the body's ability to self-regulate and self-heal. So I think you pretty much go along the same lines, Andy. You know, we class ourselves as a medical company. We're a wellness company. This is a wellness technology. It works effectively, which is why we're so passionate about it. And we want to spread the word, but it's probably important just to finish on that because we haven't said it.
Yeah, and what Boomed do, like, you know, we echo what you've just said, but what we mainly do is import devices so that we can sell them to the UK market, make them accessible here. Because when I first started this journey, I found it almost impossible to get hold of the system and had to import it myself from Germany. So, you know, we're making it accessible to the UK market and bringing a number of manufacturers here to supply.
Yeah, and very good devices you supply as well, and good service. So thanks for that. Right, everyone. I think we'll call it a day at that. Thanks, Andy. Good seeing you. Have a great weekend to you and everybody else, and we'll catch up in 3 weeks with the next PMF talk.
Yeah, speak to you soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
Bye.